All right, so how do you balance? Let's talk about this. As an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, you've done lots of this stuff. How do you balance persistence and sticking through a business idea with it's just not the right idea? It doesn't have product market fit, or just not the right thing. I need to give up, or I need to pivot and do something different. How do you balance those two things? People say, stick with it and you'll get there. But it's not always the case.
Yeah. I surround myself with people that are way smarter. And it doesn't mean that they have all the answers. It doesn't mean they're right. But I will talk to them and I'll ask them, like, hey man, like if I need digital marketing help, or if I need help with supply chain, like it doesn't really matter. I know people everywhere. And again, this goes back to community. So another plug for community, right? Just asking people who can do it in their sleep, like who's got an unconscious competence for this?
Yeah.
Right? Real estate, I don't know how many times I've called you, bro, where I'm like, hey man, I don't know, dude, this like house is doing really well, but should I get rid of it? And you're like, Peter, it's so simple. Like it's one simple calculation. I'm like, okay, thanks, bro. Like I would have lamented about it for 6 months or a year, maybe held onto that property forever.
Yeah.
But instead I sold it, right? And the next property we sold was on that. I didn't have to call you because it was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Brandon said this. That's right. I'm going to do that calculation. Oh, no, of course we're going to sell this property. And it worked out really well.
And now that property is probably worth $1 million more, and I just screwed you over.
No, dude. It went down in value.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, it worked out really well. So a story for another day. But for me, it's asking those questions. It's paying attention to the clues. I probably persevere too long. Because I don't want to lose, man.
Yeah.
Like, I want to win. And some people are like, I don't really care about winning. It's about the game. I'm like, I want to win. Like, I want to freaking win. And so I'll stick with it a little too long. But at the same time, it's like paying attention to the clues, figuring out what's not working, talking to people who have an unconscious competence in that lane, and continuing to pick at it until you're like, you know what? I feel like this has been a good go.
Yeah.
Like, I tried. I cannot finish this race.
Yeah.
I've tried and I can't finish this race. Now we're not going to persevere any longer.
Yeah.
That's my advice. It's maybe not the best advice, but that's how I look at it.
I think that's smart. I'm reading a book. I just finished it today called The Road Less Stupid, Keith Cunningham. And he talks in there about the importance of having a board of directors. Even if you're like a one-person company, having a board of directors, a group of people who you can rely on for advice, who are not afraid to say you're a moron, like you did that wrong, like that's stupid. Because again, it's like that you said earlier, the unconscious competence, right? Yeah. Like when somebody comes to me, if they were like, hey, what do you think about this real estate deal? Like I'm pretty good at being able to like look at it and tell them if it's my thoughts on it, or at least tell them all the dangers. Like, oh yeah, this is what I'd watch out for, or you didn't add capex into your calculation, whatever those things are. So yeah, who are those people in your life that you can rely on? I think that's a good question for all of us to ask. And I have resisted that. Having those people and calling them, and for years I've resisted that, and when I really try to think of why that is, it's nothing but ego. Like if I'm asking for help, it means that I'm not good enough, and therefore I don't want to ask for help because I don't want to admit that I'm not good enough. How do I overcome that?
Yeah,
Coach.
Well, I think that there's a couple things. I love it, man.
Can we call you Coach?
You call me Coach all you want. I'm like the worst at sports though. It's just a funny word. But anyways, I think that. There's a couple things. It's interesting you said not good enough. I mean, I think there's that apprehension. There's also the apprehension where you're like, man, that person's like so far along. Yeah. They're not going to be able to relate. Yep. Or I don't want to bother them.
Yep. That's huge too.
And here's what's crazy, Brandon, is like people love to help. Yeah. Like you love to be like, oh, I got this knowledge and somebody asked me, this is awesome. Yeah. I got to help Peter like get out of a property that he maybe would have been stuck in whatever. This is a victory. Like people love to help. I don't know. I don't know if I know anybody who doesn't love to help and like share their knowledge. If you ask an old timer like, hey, what was it like? They're going to talk your ear off, right? Yeah. What was it like to be in X or do Y, right? They're going to talk to you about their career. And so I think knowing that people love to help is important. And I think that the ego only gets in the way, right? Like what's ego is the enemy, Ryan Holiday, right? Like ego, there's nothing really good about ego. There's nothing really positive about ego. You can be confident. Right? Like one of my favorite quotes is, and it's from, I forgot what venture capital firm it is, strong opinions loosely held. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I don't know what
it's
an Andreessen or something. I can't remember. But like you can be confident, be like, man, I got this idea and it's incredible, but I'm willing to be wrong. Who do I know that's got the unconscious competence that I can run this by and be ready to defend it and be okay if they're like, dude, Peter, you missed it. Like, there's CapEx, bro. Like this deal doesn't work. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you helped me avoid that.
Yeah.
I don't need to be the smartest guy. I just want to win. And if I win because Brandon helped me out and I was wrong okay, that's okay. Right? We get to win together.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good.
Well, the embarrassing truth for me when I think about when I don't want to ask somebody for help in something is I'm afraid they're going to tell me, for example, let's just say there's a real estate deal that I want to do and I don't ask for help. It's not even just ego, maybe even a bigger piece of it or a large chunk of it is I don't want them to say it's a bad deal, right? And therefore, if I don't ask them, then I don't have to.
You don't have to defend it.
I don't have to, yeah. And so therefore, I just won't ask. And that's the most ridiculous, ludicrous thing because like, I don't want to buy a bad deal, so it goes back to ego. I don't want to be told that I was about to buy a bad deal. So if I just bury my head in the sand, I don't have to worry about it. And, yeah, thankfully I surround myself with a lot of smart team members who help me vet all the deals now because and I put them into place so that I'm not just, because my own instinct is to be super positive about everything and I assume everything's a great deal. Mm-hmm. And so I surround myself with underwriters and very negative people, not personality wise, but their default is no. Yeah. And so I have to convince them. In fact, that's one thing I love about Josh Dorkin. And I've told him this before.
He's just default, so negative.
Yeah, his default is always like, no, convince me. Yes. Like even like when we started the Bigger Pockets podcast, it was like, nah, no. And I'm like, no, we should do a podcast. He's like, no one likes podcasts. I'm like, no, this is going to be a big thing. He's like, no, we already missed it. And I had to convince him that podcasting wasn't a thing that we could do. And then when I convinced him, it's that strong opinions loosely held.
That's right.
Because what that superpower is, and this is in no way, I hope people are not taking this as I'm ripping on Josh. It's one of the most powerful superpowers because Josh is the least shiny object person that I know. He does not just go off a shiny object. He sticks with one thing for 20 years because he just says no to everything. Yeah. Unless you can convince him that it's actually worth doing. And that is a superpower because, it's just, what's that? There's a famous quote, I think it was Einstein or something like that, but just like successful people do a lot of things and really successful people do very few things. It's something like that.
Yeah.
And